Right, you're welcome back. It's talk time, and we're looking at fraud in Nigerian banks. We have in the studio with us forensic analyst Oriade. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Okay. Let's even begin with the NDIC report that says to about 12,279 fraud cases worth 18 billion naira in 2015. That's a 15% increase from 2014. What's responsible for this massive fraud in Nigerian banks?
Yes, a lot of factors are involved. Part of those factors are what I'll call a systemic failure in the banking industry in Nigeria. People will challenge me and say, no, it's not right. The CBN regulates the banking industry. The NDIC is also a regulator in the banking industry. But I want to disagree. Because from experience as a forensic accountant, I'm aware that rather than the CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, and/or the NDIC to regulate the banking industry, it's the other way around. It is the banking industry that are regulating both the CBN as well as the NDIC.
How do you mean?
Yes. I know because I'm involved. You see, have you ever come across a situation where you report a bank to the CBN of maybe ATM fraud?
Yeah, they say they have a unit now that from the report we got, quite a number of them were prosecuted. Some monies were returned, according to the CBN.
Have you ever seen somebody on your own who will come out to say, yes, I'm a benefactor? Forget about what CBN tells you. I am involved. Next year, I'll make it 20 years of my practice as a forensic accountant in Nigeria. I have over 400 court cases against banks that I'm prosecuting for customers.
Okay.
Day in, day out, week in, week out, I'm in various courts scattered all over Nigeria, defending the interests of the ordinary Nigerians who are being lined against by banks or being allegedly indebted thereto. And
most of these cases are fraud cases?
Fraud cases by banks, by the institutions themselves, by even their staff. And then there is no report that I write against a bank that I don't send a copy to the CBN. CBN has never lifted one finger.
All right, just hold on there. Let's dig deeper into this. Let's give some insight into the issue at hand right now. Globally, it appears there is no other place where fraud is more serious and more pronounced than in the banking sector. But the Central Bank of Nigeria says it has deployed various electronic payment systems that have helped curb incidences of fraud in banking transactions in 2015 as mobile money transaction volume grew to 4 billion during that year.
All right, the Director of Banking and Payment System Department of the CBN, Dipo Fatokun, said the actual loss as a result of fraud in bank transactions dropped from 6.2 billion naira recorded in 2014 to about 2.3 billion naira in 2015. He said while the volume of cases of attempted fraud fell from 7.8 billion to 4.4 billion in 2015, the volume of such cases jumped astronomically from 1,461 to 10.743 during the same year. All right, there we go. The CBN has said there's e-payment transaction, yes, in place, and that, of course, perhaps in terms of volume, the amount is reduced, but the cases, we have more of the cases than the money involved, really. What do you think is responsible for that, if you believe the CBN report?
I don't believe it. I'm sorry. I don't believe the Central Bank of Nigeria. Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example, just to continue from where I stopped. You see, for someone like me who have every day in, day out, I move against the banking industry, try to help stabilize the system by exposing the fraud in the banking industry against customers. And then you see these CBN people coming out to say, oh, last year we were able to help customers recover 8 billion naira, 20 billion naira in excess bank charges. And lo and behold, not one of my over 400 cases of clients is involved.
Are you trying to say then that the CBN may in some way be complicit in this fraud that we're talking about?
I say it with authority that the CBN is aiding and abetting fraud in the Nigerian banking industry.
Those are strong allegations.
Yes, yes. They know me very, very well. I don't come out to just make empty mouths. They know. Let me tell you, in the event that you don't know me, if you are aware about the probe of the banking industry in June 2008, it was as a result of my petition to the late President Yaradua in November 2007, drawing his attention to the fraud in the Nigerian industry and that industry will collapse in due course. And that when it's going on, it's going to take along with it the capital.
So you're saying even
market.
the reports we read, so where you have in some newspapers where you have customers say,
they are paid for.
They are paid for.
Yes.
Or perhaps your own customers are peculiar to you.
Why should my clients be? Why should I be singled out? I'm telling you that, look, forget about whatever you are reading in the newspaper, forget about what the Central Bank of Nigeria is saying about the banking industry. It is a scam. See, let me tell you, let me now go back to the question you asked me earlier, which has to do with it. Why is there fraud in the banking industry? Why are there attempted fraud?
Yes.
Now, a lot of factors come into play. Number one, what are the qualifications of these so-called bankers? How many of those working in the banking industry even know anything about banking? How many of these so-called bank managing directors and executive directors are professional bankers or are members of the Chartered Institutes of Bankers of Nigeria, CIBN? How many of them? If you can find one out of 20, you are lucky. Most of them are honorary members. Honorary members. What it then means is that professionalism in the banking industry has been thrown to the dogs. So you have all shades of people. Charlatans. Those who got into the banking industry as a result of man-no-man, now running the Nigerian banking industry.
When you say charlatans, yes, we do know of cases. I mean, one has heard of several cases where a history graduate finds, a job in the bank, Yoruba graduate, or even a graduate of any other course that has nothing to do with the financial sector and all of that. But that does not necessarily mean that they cannot, be trained on the job,
or have
for example,
mental
or have
capacity.
some kind of training to be able to understand the intricacies of that sector.
Thank you very much. Now, just to answer your question,
yes,
can I, who is a chartered accountant, put on wig and gown and enter into the courtroom and say I'm a lawyer? The answer is no. Can you, who is not trained by ICANN, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, go and put up a billboard to say TVC accounting firm? The answer is no, you can't do that. Because there are laws in Nigeria, there are institutes set up to train people.
Lack of professionalism, does it also erode the issue of corporate governance? Is that what you're saying?
Apparently. There couldn't be a corporate governance when you don't even know what you're supposed to do. Ab initio. Where you have a situation where those who are managing the banking industry have no business at all being there in the first instance. Now, what is their employment program like? How do they recruit? How do they recruit? Is it based on merit? Do you know how many banking and finance graduates are roaming the streets looking for job? And you have those who don't even have any business at all being there in the banking industry. Now those that have been employed, what are the employment terms and conditions? Compare the number of full-time staff to what they call contract staff. And what is the gap between in the emolument of those in the full-time employment of the bank as against those that are in? All
right, we'll come back to that. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Let's just reel out more information.
Yes, some of the various payment systems introduced by the CBN to curb fraud include the bank customers' biometric verification numbers, the BVN, fraud prevention strategies, Treasury single account TSA, agency banking and electronic dividend payment project, which I doubt very much if many Nigerians know about that one, and Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC.
Well, talking about Fatokun, he also added that, quote, an analysis of the reduction in fraud incidents in 2015 made fraud rate in Nigeria less than that of Europe as a whole, and indeed Portugal, which boasts the least fraud rate in Europe. I know you don't want to hear this, but that is what we have said. Sir?
That the level of fraud in Nigerian banks is far lower than what obtains in places like Europe.
I beg to disagree. See, I beg to disagree. See, for me, because I'm an insider, I know the workings of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I know how they help the banks to cover up a lot of fraud. I know it. I'm involved. Now,
let's even look at, let's try to break this down as much as possible. Let's get as much in as possible. You are a forensic analyst. Beyond hidden charges and all of that, tell us how banks, fleece their customers.
Yes. Some of it are, aside charges, spurious charges, unsolicited SMS, they greet you, they debit your account. Going outside the terms and conditions of your relationship with them, as in you don't agree with them, they should charge you COT, or what they now call account maintenance fee, and then they put it into they force it on you, they debit your account and take your money away forcefully. Now, there are other ways the banks fleece their customers. Look at it from this perspective. When a customer wants to enter into a relationship with a bank, it is the duty of the bank to tell the customers, these are the charges I will place
on
you. They have to tell you ab initio. But what do we find in Nigeria? What we find in Nigeria is a situation where, without you knowing what you are into, they begin to, just begin to see charges into your account, and then all sorts of things. You have a contract with a bank that says, look, you lend me money for 1 year. After 1 year, the contract has ended. These banks will now say, because you did not pay on time, even though they did not send you a demand notice, and a demand notice is a condition precedent to an action in recovery. They will now begin to say you have defaulted, and then a contract that was agreed at 17%, they begin to charge you whatever interest rate, maybe 50% per annum. And then what they are going after is your collateral security. That's what they are going after. So meanwhile, the position of the law is that's in AIB versus Integrated Dimensional Systems. That's year 2012, May 2012. Supreme Court says that once a contract has expired, no bank can charge you again. And the Supreme Court in that matter said that, look, where it is not mutually agreed on the offer letter that the bank will charge you compounded interest rate, the bank can only charge you simple interest.
Please clarify for us what you mean by when a contract has ended.
Yes, okay. A bank and a customer agrees to a lending transaction, 1 year. That this contract, this offer letter will only be for 1 year. Now, after After that 1 year, after the expiration of that contract, that means the contract has ended. The bank cannot charge you 1 kobo again. They cannot put any debit interest into your account again. That's the position of the Supreme Court, because it's in breach of the consensus the customer had with the bank that ab initio, you will only charge me for 1 year. And then that's the matter between AIB, African International Bank versus Integrated Dimensional Systems Limited, May 2012, Supreme Court. Now, in that same matter, the Supreme Court also held. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a forensic accountant, I'm involved. You know, the Supreme Court also held that, look, if it was not mutually agreed in the offer letter that interest will be compounded monthly, you know, they'll be charging you monthly, that the bank can only charge you simple interest upon the expiration of the contract.
Okay, so I want to believe that what you're explaining now forms some part of your cases that you have in the bank. Have you won any of these cases?
If I'm not winning them, I won't be here. I told you that next year I'll make it 20 years of my practice. And then let me also tell you something that will interest Nigerians. The Supreme Court in Ajabule, Alhaji Adams Ajabule versus Union Bank. That's December 16, 2011. Supreme Court said that their so-called penalty that they impose on their customers, they say 1% per month. Supreme Court said, no, that's a penalty. No bank can do it. Said no bank can do it.
So perhaps some of your cases also form some of the success story of the CBN. Do you think so? Maybe
no.
Maybe they think, okay, this is done, and then.
No. That's what I said. That even the CBN itself does not even understand what they are doing. Go and read the CBN Guide to Bank Charges of 1st of January 2004. What they said there is that the banks can impose penalty. This 1% per month penalty on the customers. Meanwhile, in Ajabule versus Union Bank, Supreme Court said no, they cannot do it.
Let's even look at something.
If it's even in the current one, which is the CBN Revised Guide to Bank Charges of 1st of April 2013.
Right. Let me ask you, you are a forensic expert. Is there such a thing as an account going dormant?
Why should it go?
Is it backed by law?
This is not backed by law.
Where bankers, call you and say, look, you have not operated this account for a while. It's gone dormant. You need to revive it or reactivate it.
Look, the position of the Supreme Court is that where a customer has money in his account, he should be given every access to that money. Now, let me ask you a question. If that same account was to be in debit, what would the bank be doing? Would they not be charging interest on it? They'll be charging interest on it. So now that it is in credit, they will now say it is dormant. Why should it be dormant? It's a relationship.
All right, let's look at the health of our banks. The CBN said that there's no cause for alarm. The NDIC has said that there's enough capital adequacy in the system, that the banks are healthy. In your own estimation, do you think the banks are healthy?
Let me even ask you, you yourself, in your own estimate, in your own opinion, do you think that the CBN is telling you the truth?
Well,
I say no.
We would not be in a position to do
don't
that.
Worry, don't worry.
Let us know your thoughts on the health of the banks.
My thought is just very simple.
Okay.
The CBN is playing on the intelligence of the average Nigerian.
So you are saying the banks are not healthy?
They are not healthy.
So we have cause to be worried?
Yes,
about
of
the
course.
state of this 23 Nigerian banks?
CBN has taken over one now.
Yes, indeed.
Wash before the end of this year.
Only management.
Don't worry. Do you know the reason? It's because of liquidity issue.
Yes.
It's because, and you see, what is happening in the banking industry in Nigeria? Are you telling me the CBN has not been aware of this? Why? All these things are happening. The reason why these things are happening is because of the change in government. You now have a president or a federal government that said, I'm not going to bail out any bank. I'm not going to bail out any bank with any public fund.
Let's look at the depositors themselves.
Yes.
How have we helped, in allowing the banks to actually perpetrate this fraud? Are we, too laid back that we allow this to go on?
See, I don't blame the depositors. Because trying to blame the depositors is blaming the public.
Okay.
The government is there to protect the public. That's the job of the federal government. That's the job of the Central Bank of Nigeria, to protect the average Nigerian on the street. What I mean is this: you don't need to go and read banking and finance to be able to transact business with your bank. All right. You don't need to do that. Except the federal government is saying, oh, no, you have to go, banking is now rocket science, which I don't agree with. See,
so the transparency should come from the banks.
It should come from the banks as regulated by the CBN. But
okay, let's quickly touch.
The CBN is not regulating the banks. It's the banks that are regulating the central bank.
Okay, all right. The NDIC has said, the NDIC report that we got said the highest fraud perpetrated by staff of the banks are done by the temporary staff. And the NDIC said that they should not even be given crucial roles. So what is happening in that regard?
Now, I am aware that the so-called temporary staff, the contract staff, they play minimal role in banking transactions. Go to any bank, you see the contract staff right at the front desk. Then you see the main staff at the back. So there is hardly any transaction that those guys those contract staff would do without being sanctioned by the permanent staff.
But there are reports that many of them are actually responsible for some of this.
In fact, the highest,
yes,
the highest cases. I mean, number of.
For me, I don't work with the banks, but if I know the way they operate, I can tell you that there is no how a temporary staff will perpetuate fraud without the connivance and collusion of the permanent staff. But the way I look at it is that the contract staff is always a fall guy. Because, just like I told you earlier, the temporary staff are not happy doing the same thing. You can imagine yourself staying in the same position for 8 years, earning the same salary. No increment, no promotion, nothing whatsoever. And then those who are permanent staff, they take their leave allowance, they go on holiday to Honolulu and Dubai at the expense of the bank, they get promotions, they become, but you who is a temporary staff, you are there just marking time. So I'm not really surprised. But again, I say that it takes two to tango.
Okay. Indeed, and that's where we have to live it.
End this tango.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on TVC.
Thank you so much, forensic expert, forensic accountant, actually looking at the state of Nigerian banks and the fraud that's reported to be going on there. Thank you so much for your time. All right.